Agua. Tierra. Viento. Sol.
More than 24 Michigan State University students protested today the lack of support at the school for Chicano or Latino students.
I can have to let them know we're here and we're not going to take it anymore! We want Xicano Studies at this university! Enough with the lies, the broken promises, the negligence with this university's administration. I can have to let them know we're here and we're not going to take it anymore! I'm mad, I'm angry. I got hate in me. And I don't want that to be for my little carnalitas, my little carnalitas. I want them to grow up, be proud of their home, because that's what Lansing is to us. It's our home, this is where we grew up. We're fighting for to see that our future and our children will continue this march. This Victor Sanchez Boulevard. It should be around High Street. That picture. We want Xicano Studies at this university.
I'm the one who you call mojada, wetback, spit, beaner, greaser, nail ese. I'm an educated Chicana, an Azteca warrior, una revolucionaria, aguillista, a zapatista. Chingao, don't you get it? I'm a mechista.
I don't see anybody saying that when the English department wants books, that the English department is making demands on the university.
Back in the day, well, you guys kind of young, so you might not have been around, but back in the 60s and 70s, somebody would yell Chicano and somebody else would yell power. Somebody would yell Chicano and somebody would say power. Well, you know what? We're going to graduate tonight. You can't get power unless you got a nation. You can't get power unless you got a source of power. So instead of saying power, when I say Chicano, what are we going to say? That's right. We're going to revolutionize. And this may be the germ. We don't know it. This may be the germ. It was a germ for the letter X. That's right. It started here. Up until a few years ago, this MEXA, MSU campus, on the MSU campus was the most prestigious MEXA, the most combative in the United States, and one of the smallest. And I don't see why you can't return to that profile, to that stature, to that reputation. So when I say Chicano, you break out and you say nation, because we're going to graduate tonight. And that's why I said stop pimping the Aztecs and start nation building, because it's time to graduate. We got to stop being kids, we got to stop being frivolous, and we got to stop being led by the Pied Pipers out there, who, by the way, aren't here tonight. Chicano!
Nation!
Chicano!
Nation!
Chicano!
Nation!
Chicano!
Nation!
At Michigan State University, the ongoing battle over culture and identity was also raging through the streets of Lansing, Michigan, starting with the murder of Cipriano Torres by the Lansing police in November of 1991, followed by the reformation of MEXA at Michigan State in 1992. By 1994, the Zapatista Army of National Liberation had taken the field in Chiapas, Mexico, and locally, the battle over Cesar Chavez Avenue and radio racism exploded. In 1996, police raids on Latino community centers and more deaths at the hands of the police were countered by the machistas at Michigan State University.
One of the best things about doing these things that we were involved in is we found so many other people who didn't try to tell us, well, we don't know why you're so mad. We were all furious.
When I think of that group of people, we were like a family. You know, we ate together, we partied together, but at the end of the day, I didn't think of it as, well, Mark's in charge or Todd's in charge. It's like, this is our family, this is our group.
I was learning so much so fast. It was really scary to think that I wanted to embrace something that my parents were trying to move away from.
It shaped my entire life. Literally shaped my entire life. I get the book smart, but now use that and pick up a picket sign and put your money where your mouth is.
When I came here, I thought I was back in the 60s. I loved it. There were demonstrations by students. They were saying, Chicano power. I thought, oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven.
You know, I actually look back a lot and think to myself, what kind of person would I be if I didn't do that, if I didn't go through that, if I would have gone to a different school?
People would always say, oh no, well that takes place in California, Texas, New Mexico. Tell me, yeah, that's not gonna happen here. However, all of these accounts really taught me that we didn't have to look south, we didn't have to look west. We just had to look inward, and it was there.
I think that we get lulled into this sense of acceptance, that we've been accepted, that we do belong because we're good citizens, because we make donations, because we know important people, because we are important people. It's true. You're born and raised someplace, you think you're home.
So it was like two different worlds, like the world of who we are, this is what we do, this is the norm, and then there was a family, or the outside, which is very different, like nobody brought chorizo tacos to lunch.
I grew up in a white culture, and I had sort of put up with a number of insults and to some degree indignities that I was just eager to sort of turn the table on.
I remember that it was incredibly racist. I was treated quite poorly for the majority of my childhood, and I really relied on my home and my parents and my close friends to serve as my support network, because it was indeed, sadly, very segregated and very racist.
When we met, I think, students who were organizing in Lansing, who were grounded in a community where they were organizing and where they were based and where they, were from. I think it gave us a base of community as well from which to do our organizing.
When I was a kid in Lansing, sometimes people said a bunch of racist crap, right? I mean, Rosa was forever haunted by the fact that one of her friend's moms had asked us what we were, and Rosa said we were Mexican. And this girl's mom said, don't say Mexican, say Spanish. Mexican sounds dirty.
For those of us from Lansing, the struggle for Xicano Studies really begins with the murder of Cipriano Torres Jr. in the early morning hours of November 4th, 1991, by the Lansing Police Department. There had been police shootings before this one in Lansing, and over the course of the 1990s, there would be several more high-profile killings by the Lansing police, all of which would elicit an escalating response from the Chicano, Latino, Black, and white communities. But for those of us at the end of 1991, the brutality of the incident, 33 bullets discharged, 5 direct hits in the chest, and 1 shotgun blast to the back, really hit home on the morning of November 5th when we woke to the news of the police shooting at a local Motel 6 on the corner of what is now Malcolm X and South Washington Avenue. What happened that morning was a tragedy that shook the Chicano community to its core. I did not know Cipriano Torres. In fact, none of the people I interviewed for the documentary knew Cipriano Torres personally. What we did know from growing up in Lansing was that his death wasn't simply a mistake, but the result of a general criminalization of Black and brown youth. Cipriano Torres' death, however, brought together people who most likely would have never crossed paths, and that those unlikely friendships would continue from city council meetings and the streets of Lansing to the hallways of Michigan State University, where those friendships would form the basis of the MSU MEXA chapter in the 1990s.
At the end of 1991, when Cipriano Torres was shot, it was really big news. It was at a motel that was right off of a main thoroughfare, a highway thoroughfare. There were a number of police officers involved. Just basically they were emptying the capacity that their weapons held.
the Mexican community was, bam. I mean, they rallied fast. I was surprised at how fast they came together. Really surprised. And I went to the town hall or whatever they had at the time.
The initial meeting, there was one of the initial community meetings, and I went up there, by myself, not really knowing what to expect.
We were in a student group at LCC, and we were somewhat, in ways, politically naive, but at the same time we were also cohesive, and we got involved and made sure that we went to those forums.
I really went in there thinking that this 23-year-old kid bit off more than he could chew, and my opinion wasn't necessarily of sympathy or empathy. I just wondered what had happened.
So for me personally, it had an effect where it almost, again, going back to understanding the culture and our struggle, I remember hearing the talk, but all of a sudden that day I woke up and I saw it in real life. Like, whoa, this is the struggle. He was a brown man who got shot for zero for no reason.
I wanted to know the truth. That's the reporter in me, you know what that's like. So I was reporter first, Chicana second, and I think that this is the thing that made me the activist.
Torres not only affected me and all my brown friends in a very profound way.
The police were created to maintain the status quo, to maintain law and order. And the order of things is that if somebody is starving, that they won't steal food because it's illegal. The order of things is if your husband beats you every day, you won't shoot him because it's illegal. That's the order of things. That's the status quo.
What was jarring about that shooting was that we realized there was a mindset within law enforcement that brown people are inherently dangerous.
I felt Cipriano in this case was, it was a calling from our people, from our community, and I answered it.
So Mayor McCain was the mayor at the time, and I went up to him and I said, I'd like to be part of your committee. And he says, well, what's your position on this? And I says, I really don't have one right now. And he said, fine. So he put me on the committee. I had absolutely no idea how that was going to change my life.
They say they heard my brother fire a shot at him. That's one big question, I remember seeing on the news, pretty sure it was Channel 6, that they had a professional on there, or a guy who owns a gun shop or something, saying there's no way in the world, that a BB gun without a CO2 cartridge or with one is going to make the sound of a gun, a 45 or whatever it was. There's no way in the world it's going to make that sound. And when the police officers say, we heard him fire at us, and so we fired back, kind of eats at you. Come on, I'll say we're not that stupid.
On December 4th, 1992, a little over a year after Cipriano Torres was murdered by the Lansing police, the newly formed MEXA group, along with other Latino and Asian Pacific undergraduate students at Michigan State University, presented MSU President Gordon Geyer with a list of 15 demands. Among those 15 demands, 3 would come to dominate the political landscape of student activism at MSU and the greater Lansing community for the next decade and beyond. Michigan State take responsibility for its social role in its agricultural program by honoring the United Farm Workers Great Boycott. Michigan State create a Xicano Latino Studies Center similar to Wayne State University, this program to do its own recruitment, retention, and teach its own curriculum. Michigan State recognized the Chicano as Native American, indigenous to this continent. These demands were formulated by MEXA students with the assistance of Rudy Hernandez, a young MSU graduate student from Detroit whom I had met during community meetings about the Cipriano Torres shooting. I was 26 years old, the father of 3 small children, attending Lansing Community College and working on the school newspaper. Rudy's impact on me was immediate. He facilitated my transfer to MSU in the winter of 1993, the semester after we had given Gordon Geyer the list of demands. It was Rudy who introduced me and the other LCC transplants to MEXA.
The other thing that really set MEXA apart was that there was always a plan. There was a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was always an end game. And I think we worked hard to make sure we got to the end game.
We did a lot of planning. There was a lot of study. It wasn't really spontaneous. You know, there was a lot of work involved. There was a lot of organizing involved. There was advice from people who had already done actions, 10, 20 years before.
Everything that the group did that was action oriented, I felt had the most impact. So my view of resistance was probably widened by the whole thing, because I didn't understand going in just how many different forms it could take.
The State of the University protest, which I think was a really powerful, defining moment in the whole movement, but I would have never done it on my own. I would have never had the courage to stand up in a room of thousands of people and just disrupt, the president of the university's speech if I didn't have this core group behind me who said, "You do it, and we're behind you." And actually, it was actually Christina Zapata who went first. I think we all kind of agree. She's like, it'd be more impactful if I went first, because it's important to let other people know that it wasn't just one man show.
A lot of the administration and other adults sometimes were really annoyed with us because we were constantly being told, you can't do this, and then we would do it.
For once, we had an organization in a big university that was prominent, here in the Midwest, that was saying, no more. We have a voice and we will fight.
I think in Ann Arbor, they were a little more savvy in the sense that, they would immediately sort of give, if there was push from students, they would give, whereas it seems like here, they didn't feel like they had to. So I think that was really critical. The fact that they underestimated you because, you're brown.
And that's what the events in the 90s did. It really gave a lot of us the nourishment that we need to keep going. It was ethnic studies. It was a real life course in ethnic studies.
Well, Peter McPherson used to show up and say the most ridiculous things and just enrage people. And I think he was so mad that anybody would talk to him this way. I think in retrospect, right, as a professor now, probably a lot of those people just were like, I got something in the crock pot, why am I still here?
So in that sense, the administration didn't have anything to do with it, but they were still operating within parameters that had been, within space that had been really created by the student movement from the 60s and 70s.
I felt like the administration, they were the obstacle, right? So they were going to be the hurdle to overcome. President McPherson, Lou Ann Simon, who was the provost at that time.
Kids were very notorious. They were notorious that, it was one of the things you didn't want to lock horns with was with the MEXA kids. You didn't want to lock horns with them because you knew they were going to bring it.
You weren't going to let yourself be humiliated. In fact, you were going to humiliate the administration if they weren't going to, take you seriously.
The campaign to bring the United Farm Workers' Great Boycott to Michigan State University began as one of the original demands delivered by MEXA students and their allies in December of 1992. Their desire for workplace justice stemmed from the fact many of us are first and second generation from the fields. The battle for better working conditions had been waged for decades throughout the state by our predecessors. The issue was not new, and we were surprised at the way the incoming president, M. Peter McPherson, responded so stridently against the idea of the Great Boycott when he took over the job of MSU's president in the fall of 1993. It wasn't as if Michigan State hadn't taken political stances like this in the past. The university had joined the United Farm Workers Lettuce Boycott in the 1970s and was one of the first universities in the country to divest financially from the apartheid regime in South Africa. The UFW Great Boycott was the main organizing tool for machistas at MSU from 1992 through 1996, when a 7-day hunger strike by MEXA students brought some resolution to the issue. By 1994, when Paulo Gordillo began his push to rename a street in Lansing after Cesar Chavez, the Great Boycott effort had opened the door to relationships with Chicano and Latino students at other universities, leading to the creation of La Onda Latina, a statewide mutual aid organization. Most notably was the relationship with students at the University of Michigan, down the road in Ann Arbor. The other relational piece of the Great Boycott for machistas at Michigan State were the deep connections built with white activist students, various unions, and members of the Detroit chapter of the Workers' World Party.
This boycott is for different reasons than the first one. This boycott has to do with trying to regulate the use of pesticides in the fields. And what's happening is that in the Central Valley in California, where they grow the largest amount of this table grape, we're talking about table grapes, they have found some cancer clusters throughout the Central Valley in little communities like McFarland and Early Mart and Fowler and places like that, where the cancer rate among children is 12 times the national average. And it's causing a real problem. Children are being born deformed and dying before they reach the age of 10, and it has really been a problem. And so we're trying to bring that to the attention of the American public that they can help.
You need to have a base of support in order to achieve any type of social change, right? In order to force a concession, you need to be able to demonstrate power.
The conversation went into producing a video that talked about the United Farm Workers and the Great Boycott. And so that's the first time that I remember or recall starting to get involved with MEXA. I did start going to the meetings. The things that people were saying started to make sense after I started going to class.
And I just remember sitting in the administration building, sitting outside of the halls and fighting to have our voices heard.
When we would go up and put up these flyers and stuff, there was this constant, usually about once every time you would go put them up, you would have to have some argument with some person who would be challenging you. You know, one time a person told me, well, I think it's probably actually better if a lot of these migrant workers die, because one of the reasons they can't make as much money is because there's too many of them.
When you were able to push the administration around the Great Boycott, which is actually something that we were organizing around as well in Ann Arbor. But here you got to the point where you had to force a meeting with the administration, you know, and then we're throwing grapes on the table and stomping on them, which is, I think, an incredibly radicalizing moment.
The issue that we have here is a human rights issue. These people have the right to work and to live in safety and in comfort. And if we cannot make the people at this university see that, then there's something seriously wrong with the education that they're trying to give us at this university.
I believe there are real problems with, I think the Great Boycott is a symbol, and people around this country have been boycotting, or that has been around for a long time, and nothing has really happened about it. And so I have some problems with it. I haven't finally decided, but frankly, I have some questions.
Okay, let me just tell you, see, nothing has happened. The reason for this boycott is because of the pesticides. And for your information, some of the pesticides that we have targeted have already either been restricted or banned entirely. So the boycott is working.
I participated in that boycott, so I was really hungry. That week was brutal.
The hunger strike was one of the most defining moments of my entire life. It was 7 days that changed my life.
For me, that was one of the most perfect examples of us benefiting not just from our own culture, but from everybody else's background.
That week with people, you know, you have a lot of time because we had to be there 24/7 when we were in class. We had a lot of opportunities to talk, like me and Maria, Mark, and get to know each other on a very personal level, because I had started at MSU the fall before that. The hunger strike was in February, so I didn't really know everybody that well yet.
When that hunger strike occurred, it kind of raised the stakes. It brought a lot of media attention that MSU didn't particularly want, because it wasn't something a message that they could control.
That hunger strike was to tell the university that we were dead serious, completely, wholeheartedly willing to put our lives on the line.
The idea of an escalation campaign and seeing it over the length of the entire campaign, and how successful it can be, and that that they don't know when it ends. Like, what's the next step after this? And they probably didn't think there was a next step, but the ability to escalate, then give them space, escalate, then give them space, and constantly, have them questioning what will come next.
I knew it was going to be effective because everything else we had been doing had been effective, even though people might not think they were effective. Every single thing that we did as Mechistas on this campus was effective.
So I think it was a powerful statement to the university that this balance of power. There's no balance of power. You're dictating everything. You have all the cards. This is one of the few cards we can play.
It was our last resort. Like all of our protests were starting to become stale, if you will. Like a protest is a protest. You can only write so many letters to the state news. You can only do so many sit-ins, things that didn't really change anything. So we essentially, threw our ace on the table.
Well, it brought a lot of instant credibility to the seriousness of what we were about. It let people know we weren't joking around. We were really willing to put life on the line. And like when Mark went to the hospital, it really told not just the student community, but the greater community that they're not playing around, they're not joking, they're serious.
It made people notice. It made people stand up and say, oh, these kids are really doing this for a right reason. And it made administration, have to stand up and go, all right, we're taking notice now.
I did not know the power that was within me to create change. That was the culmination of a lot of work, not just by Mechistas, not just by Mexican Americans, not just by Latinos, but it was a community effort locally on campus by multiple organizations. It taught me that you cannot do it alone. You cannot fight hegemony by yourself.
It showed that the community, when it was engaged in a struggle, it was looking at points of escalation. How can you escalate in order to obtain your goals, right? And you had to look at, in the sense you're talking about the heightened contradictions, you need to be able to figure out what are the points that we can escalate.
But I think what these people are trying to say is that 500 years ago, the blunderbuss and the spears of the Spaniards and the Europeans came over here. And those blunderbuss and those spears are now the airplanes that are flying over the people who are working the fields. It's the same thing. It's genocide, okay? We're talking about killing people because of their color, because of their class. These people were here long before us. These people will be here long after us. We have to remember that. We have to remember that it's not different. Our pesticides that we're developing here at Michigan State University are being dumped on these people, killing them. Their babies are coming out with numerous defects. Breast cancer, high cancer rates with these people, that's a big problem. You need to understand that. I understand that, and I come from a similar situation. Small town, very homogeneous white people. So I can learn that. I think that you can learn that too.
The decades-long battle for Cesar Chavez Avenue in Lansing began in 1994. It is a defining story in the history of my Chicano Latino community. Paulo Gordillo began lobbying the Lansing City Council in the fall of 1993 to change the name of Grand Avenue, a downtown street with highway signage, to Cesar Chavez Avenue. This effort followed closely on the heels of a heroic and ultimately successful struggle on the part of the Black community to rename Logan Street, a major thoroughfare after Martin Luther King Jr. Concluding months of intense lobbying by Gordillo, the Chicano Latino community, and many white and Black allies, the City Council officially changed Grand Avenue to Cesar Chavez Avenue at a City Council meeting on February 28, 1994. A few months later, the city celebrated the name change on September 16th with a citywide march and the unveiling of new signage on the 496 highway and the street itself. But the celebration was short-lived. A virulent and racist backlash led by Q106 radio DJ Tim Barron and Fred Stackable, a local attorney, brought out the worst elements of Lansing's underlying disdain for our Chicano Latino community. In May 1995, by a vote of 8,057 to 5,302, citizens of Lansing voted to remove Cesar Chavez Avenue and return the street to its previous name, Grand Avenue, granting my hometown the distinction of being the only city where the Cesar Chavez street name has been removed. It was an event of such naked racism and oppression that the very mention of it would bring conversations to a halt for decades. The white community did not want to talk about it. They were either embarrassed or silently triumphant about what happened, but true to the nature of settler colonial mentality, they found ways to scapegoat people of color and make excuses for the two men who led the campaign whenever the issue was raised. Between 1995 and 2017, the battle over Cesar Chavez Avenue continued. In the fall of 2017, the Lansing City Council, once again, after decades of lobbying by the Chicano Latino community, renamed a stretch of Grand River Avenue that runs through the part of town traditionally called the Barrio to Cesar Chavez Avenue on October 30th, 2017. The new signage was erected on January 1st, 2018.
I literally was in my bed one day. I got up and I said, I'm going to do this today. Whatever it is, I'm going to do it. I just sat on the edge of the bed and said, okay, I want a street. I want a street for me and mine. And of course, the first person that came to mind was Cesar Chavez, of course. So, well, here's a man who walked the walk. Here's a man who fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. He's the reason many, if not all of us, are here today. So I literally called the State Journal and said, hey, my name is Paulo, and I'm going to rename a street in Lansing.
Well, looking back, particularly from a post-2016 lens, and some of the views expressed by people that I know on social media, now, as the contemporary lens of Lansing compared to the lens of Lansing at that time, I am not at all surprised by that reaction, by the undercurrent of a certain bigotry and latent racism, kind of passive racism that exists in this community.
The fact that we wanted to be included in this society, and having a major street or thoroughfare named after one of our heroes is something that should be done with pleasure, not with so much disdain.
What I'd like us to do to begin with is, Mr. Chavez, if you could talk to us about the importance of today's events and how they tie in with your brother's philosophy.
I think it was a great, like you said, a great turnout, and I was very happy to be here, part of this celebration you had here, this dedication. I think the reason it's important is because the legacy of Cesar will live on with something like this. People are going to continue doing Cesar's work or helping and doing Cesar's work and what he believed in. And I think that was the real significant about today. I was very pleased with the turnout. I thought it was a very, very beautiful event.
Cesar Chavez Avenue, well, once again, that was the community trying to unite and come together and to claim a space.
It's about recognizing your place in this world and recognizing it in a way that's not just counter to the dominant culture, but independent and beautiful in its own right.
That's why we did the things that we did, because if we don't go out and organize and put out a different message about who we are and where we're from, about La Chicanada, then a lot of people will internalize that stuff, and it makes them less human. It makes them less able to reach their potential.
The controversy continues tonight over Lansing's newest street sign, which reads Cesar Chavez Avenue. Petition signatures were turned in yesterday to force changing the name back to Grand Avenue.
It's a slap in the face to the Hispanic community and to the greater minority community. It's unfortunate that there are those like Mr. Stackable who want to turn Lansing back 30 years. And Lansing is trying to make it happen, as the slogan is, and is attempting to become a world-class city, but we will not become a world-class city until we embrace our Hispanic, African-American minority communities.
Paulo Gordillo did a hell of a job with collecting signatures and going to the city council and But he had a lot of stamina to do that and courage, really.
So with the Cesar Chavez naming the street, it was a connection. It was a connection and a validation to Cesar Chavez, to what he did, and to continue the struggle.
This Victor Sanchez Boulevard, it should be around High Street. Well, I can't pronounce it, so why should it be a main drag in this town?
Not Victor. Cesar. Victor.
Well, if I can't pronounce it, half of these people in this town can't pronounce it. So you need to stick it over there where the Spanish population is, over there around High Street, so you can make them happy. As one person, I do not believe that Grand River or Grand Avenue should be changed over to that. I think Grand Avenue should stay as Grand Avenue for one, because it's a dedication to the river, Grand River, and I think that we should keep our streets the way that they are right now. We shouldn't be changing streets. If we want to change streets, then we should change it to something that people can vote on and go up here and accept. Thank you.
I remember being at Cristo Rey. The kids were all playing. It was a festive, it felt like a festive occasion. And then the numbers came up, and Mayor Hollister came up and said that we had lost. I remember thinking there was nothing sadder than hearing that little girl cry, and then the other kids started crying. They had invested so much in this campaign for them, and it meant so much to them to have Cesar Chavez Avenue, and then to hear that they had lost it. They're 12. These kids are young, and I remember hearing that child just wail. We called it a llanto, we call them llantos, and she just let out this llanto that broke my heart, and I just got so freaking pissed that our babies had been hurt.
The community rallied, but it started with Cipriano Torres, then the street, then Q106, and then issues, and then the movement at Michigan State University. But those two issues brought a community together.
Maybe I'm just a slow learner, but it's like I still am often just surprised by these things. Me growing up, Mexicans or Chicanos were just invisible. That was the racism towards Mexican American Chicanos it's the absence of them from the story.
People here today have talked about historical impact that Cesar Chavez has had on our history. Well, that's not the only type of historical preservation that we should have. Now, why shouldn't we have a street named after Cesar Chavez? I certainly don't have any objection to that. But I don't see why we should destroy a part of our heritage, our first platted town, by changing a name from Grand Avenue to Cesar Chavez. We should keep our heritage, the first plat of the city of Lansing, just as it is now. Logan Street is not a part of that. Logan Street came after the plat for the city of Lansing. It would seem to me, with the uniqueness that Cesar had, and I'm calling him by his first name, I certainly did not know him, wish I had, that the Hispanic people could be able to find something more unique than to follow the tradition of what the African community has done. I do plan on trying to preserve the heritage of this city.
I mean, that's what organizing is for, isn't it? It's for trying to make sure that other people don't internalize the hatred that's in those comments, and instead say, no, this is not how things are going to be. Your perception of who we are is wrong. You are a bad person. You should be ashamed. We're not the ones who should be ashamed. And I think that's why some of the things that we did were important. I mean, I think from a technical sense, sometimes the fact that the Cesar Chavez Avenue thing was a loss made it hard later in Lansing to organize to do things, because people, remember in the Benavides campaign, people were like, well, we're never going to be able to elect this person because look what happened with Cesar Chavez Avenue from a tactical standpoint.
But we did elect Benavides.
This is true.
Another thing they said we couldn't do.
Yes, we did. And it's not like, it was some huge transformative policy thing, but it was a kind of vindication. I stood on a street corner with a bunch of high school kids from Eastern holding some signs, and people were honking and waving, and they were happy, you know, because the campaign had gone really well. And one of them turned to me and said, "This is a good day to be Mexican." I was like, I mic drop.
On May 5th, 1994, a few months after the City Council voted to change Grand Avenue to Cesar Chavez Avenue, and in the midst of the Chicano Latino community celebrating our street name change victory, a local radio station, Q106, at the time the #1 station in the Lansing market, aired a so-called comedy spot portraying Mexicans as lice-infested illegal aliens ready to be raffled off to the highest bidder for some good old-fashioned slavery. The backlash from the Chicano Latino community against the Q106 radio station was immediate. In retaliation, Tim Barron, the DJ responsible for airing the spot, began having attorney Fred Stackable on the morning show to talk about the Cesar Chavez Street issue. Through daily monitoring and taping of The Breakfast Club, Maria Garcia Santana, Guillermo Lopez, and a few others were able to prove their allegations to the FCC that Q106 was taking a position on a political campaign without fair representation for the other side. As a result, Q106 received a hefty fine from the FCC and was forced to sell their license. Barron wedded the issue of Cesar Chavez Avenue to his own racist viewpoints. Stackable did the same by embracing Q106's hate campaign. The white power structure of Lansing, led by Mayor David Hollister, which a few months earlier voted to create Cesar Chavez Avenue, was silent with a few notable exceptions. It took 24 years and overcoming a mountain of excuses to bring some resolution to the damage these two men did to the whole Lansing community.
Some are giving away trips to Mexico City, but we're bringing Mexico to you. That's right, we're giving away Mexican. Real live Mexican. Ay, caramba. We'll be smuggling illegal aliens across the border in the wheel well of the station van. Then we'll give one to you. Imagine your own personal Mexican. They'll wash your car, clean your house, pick your crop. Anything you want, because if they don't, you'll have them deported. Adios, amigo. Be the 10th caller when you hear this sound. And win a Mexican. Members of this station and their families are not eligible to own Mexicans. Bathing and delousing of Mexicans is winner's responsibility. Station assumes no liability for infectious diseases carried by Mexicans. Celebrate Cinco de Mayo in your own home every day with your very own Mexican. People listening to win.
Q106 was just a really distasteful campaign against the community, and it was led by Tim Barron and the station, because they gave him permission to do it and they didn't admonish him for doing what he was doing. And what he did was he worked with Fred Stackable. Fred Stackable was an attorney who really hated the idea of having to change the address on his stationery from Grand Avenue to Cesar Chavez Avenue. Nobody took him very seriously. But then Tim Barron got his hands on Stackable and on this issue. And it literally became a campaign. An on-air campaign. Well, he was having people come and sign a petition so that, you know, it would be put on the ballot and the people would vote on whether or not they wanted the street name changed.
And my daughter, Victoria, was by me, and she says, "Dad, why are they so mean?" I don't know, yeah. So it really hit me, you know, really.
It was just to be funny, but really deep inside, no, that's really how you feel. When you look at me, you think I'm dirty, you think I have lice, you think I'm uneducated, and I really have to work hard just to prove who I am.
Q106 was just another example of the disunity that was prevalent in the city. The fact that he felt so comfortable to make jokes about bringing Mexicans over from, you know, across the border and, you know, giving them away so that they could cook for you and do what have you. It's just a clear disrespect.
And I remember going out there to Q106 to the south side to Holt, standing out there protesting it. And once again, a very wide variety of reactions, right? Some of our people saying, "Oh, come on, you guys, take it easy. It's just a joke. It's funny. Why do you guys have to get upset? Why are you guys so uptight about everything?" At the same time, I remember people, we were just out there standing on the side of the road with our billboards, not doing anything else other than just trying to have a voice. And I remember being spat on, right, as people would go by, you know. The one that probably hurt the most is a lot of the people who, our own people, right, who felt that we were taking something too far, that we just needed to lighten up.
I mean, and it was a barrage. It was Mexicans are dirty. It was we have too many Mexicans here. In the course of all this time, we also had 2 people on a train. They had come across the border in a train, and apparently the coyote never let them out. And the train never stopped until it got here. They found them at, I think it was one of the GM train stations. And so they were unidentified. And because they had been dead for a while, we couldn't identify who they were. The community got together, a plot was donated, and we buried them. We gave them a decent burial because, you know, they've got family going, what happened to them? You know, they'll never know. And we won't know to tell them because we don't know who they were. I mean, we got that. We understood the power of what had happened. And I remember pulling into the WLNS parking lot, and I'm listening to the radio because I'm listening to this idiot because I wanted to see what he was, up to. And he goes, I'm glad they're dead. We have too many Mexicans here anyway, and Guatemalans and Nicaraguans and however all these things that he was saying, and I remember thinking, this is not about the street. This man is trying to take us out. He is dehumanizing us in a way that will allow other people to do what they want to us, and we fought back justly.
This is after the Cipriano Torres shooting. She brought it to our collective attentions that, hey, there's this radio station airing this denigrating, quote, humorous or satirical ad that just basically targets the Mexican population. And this is at the same time, it coincides with an effort led by Paulo Gordillo, who followed the proper channels, who petitioned, local government, who got it passed to get a street renamed honoring a person whose legacy is important.
Tim Barron put his muscle behind it and started giving away things. People would come in and sign the petition, and so he was giving away t-shirts and mugs and who knows what else. Well, long story short, he ended up getting enough signatures and it went to a public vote. And this is the part that blows my mind. People came out of their, their nests, their hiding places, wherever they were, to put us in our place.
And then because of Key 106 and Tim Barron and Fred Stackable kind of joining their collective forces, it kind of interwove those two issues.
The 106 issue was spurred on by the street renaming. I'm sure of it.
Worse than the parody was the banter between the 2 DJs in the morning, Tim Barron and Deb Hart. And to me, that was the more hurtful of all of that whole incident, because again, that sense of acceptance or that sense of community is gone, because now this isn't a parody, it's coming from California. This is a direct attack from local celebrities with a big voice.
But with the Tim Barron thing, what he did was horrible, but it wasn't what he did so much as it was how people tried to be like afterwards, oh, it's not really a big deal. This isn't really racist. All these people who wanted to defend him for what?
Back on May 5th, the Mexican holiday Cinco de Mayo, the station aired a parody of radio contests that stereotyped Mexicans by giving them away as prizes.
They have offered little more than what is already required by law and what is in their best interest. Key 106's refusal to repair the damage to our youth is contemptible.
I was so hurt that the radio station chose to approach us in a very poor way. And then when we were in the meeting with the Q106 disc jockeys, all they did was basically patronize us. It was as if they could care less. They were just pandering to us. It was just like an obligatory meeting. They could care less what we thought or said. I thought it was quite pathetic.
We might have thought it as just an isolated event. You understand that this is a playbook out of colonialism.
I said, when this is no longer in the news, when this is no longer an issue, when it has died down, I said, I will still be there. I said, and I'm going after your license because I know how. And so it got very serious after that, and I really do believe that that's part of why Q106 management allowed Tim Barron to just keep doing what he was doing. And we ended up losing the street. And I've often wondered if we had been the good Mexicans and kept quiet, if anything would have changed.
Earlier in the week, there was a press conference, and the community came out and said, this is not over. If anything, this is just starting, because the negotiations broke down with Q106. They, on the other hand, have said, we thought we were squared away, we thought this was all set, this was all behind us. How do you respond to that?
Well, the activities that you're referring to is the picketing that we've been doing both at the station itself and also at some of the locations where they have been advertising for their sponsors. And I got several calls from members of the community, mostly youth, that were angry and they wanted to visibly demonstrate their anger. So they came up with the idea of picketing. And by picketing, I think we were successful in revealing that they were using comedy to camouflage the promotion of racism. And we also were able to irritate, discomfort, and embarrass them. And I think at least to this point it's been very successful. One day they're saying, or they have this parody where they're talking about an imaginary people. A couple days later, they have real people who have been victimized by this parody, standing in front of their windows with picket signs accusing them of being racist. So we were able to materialize who they were victimizing, and that was one of the goals there.
You made it real.
We made it real. We're not a people who are intangible or somebody in theory or a parody. We are real.
It was mainly Apache who had him coming in and teaching us all these things and what language really means and using the proper labels. Language matters, and if we pay attention to language, we could find our history.
The X in Xicano was more, not so much to sort of say, well, we're these mixed people, but to say, no, we're really indigenous people. We're Indians from whose ancestors are from Mexico. And we're not conquered. And we're not going to be conquered.
Just like Malcolm X, man. You know, to me, the X means more connecting to the roots, connecting to the Mexica people, connecting to a historic, continuous rebellion and battle. So, of course, you're going to be scared. And that's why, you know, when we changed, you know, MEXA with an X, it's like saying something, saying that we are not going to do the complacent, it's almost like Hispanicized, you know, version of MEXA.
Why was it scary to other people? They come to a Big Ten university to assimilate, to get taught what white people know, because what they know, because they learned it at universities, they have become successful. They have a job, they have, you know, a family, and then that pays their bills. We were attacking that basic lifestyle.
The X acknowledged the indigenous roots that I come from, also a sense of strength, and also kind of taking back that political piece of just being Chicana.
Growing up in Mexico City, I knew the X. I had been to Xochimilco. I knew that the X was a sh sound, but I didn't know why.
Changing the CH to an X, what you're really saying is you reject what was done to you. You reject that 500 years of colonialism.
It makes me feel connected to my, to my culture, and it makes me feel powerful. And it reminds me of where I came from, and it reminds me of my experiences, and it goes directly back to MSU. We were, outspoken. We were not going to accept a no.
And that's why the X and the Chicano was so important, because it was a link to saying no. We're the indigenous people here. Our ancestors walked on this continent for thousands of years before you all even got an idea in your head to get in a boat and sail over here.
Chicano with an X, to me, was almost like we're gonna take just the identity of being Chicano and then make that a little bit more extreme.
Honestly, I really never, and I mean, I was probably like 19, 20 years old. I never in a million years thought that, an identity title would reverb so much. And I mean, what I mean by that is, in 1997, MEXA of MSU, we actually hosted the MEXA National Conference on campus, and it was a big deal. I mean, we probably had thousands of students come to our campus for a national event. We had to raise thousands of dollars. We had to get conference rooms, boardrooms. We booked the Wharton Center, which is MSU's crown jewel theater on campus. We had our opening night ceremonies there. I actually emceed all of that. It was a really, really big deal, obviously. Even to this day, that was quite an undertaking, to be a bunch of kids, to do all that, to book speakers, to make their travel arrangements, to make their hotel arrangements, etc. I'll never forget the backlash that we got from fellow Xicano students from all over the country. I think it was, memory serves correctly, it was University of California, Los Angeles, and it was the ones from South Texas, from Edinburgh, where they just were like aghast by the X. Like they were just like, what are you doing? Who are you? Who are you Mexicans from Michigan to tell us how to call ourselves? You don't know shit. You're up here in the north. You don't even speak Spanish, which some of us did. You know what I mean? Like they were appalled. They were insulted. And that was, to me, it was like a left hook, because I'm like, we're supposed to be on the same team and we're fighting each other.
Part of why they were so threatened by it is because MSU MEXA tried to, with some other groups, change the direction of MEXA nationally to be more political, to be more trying to fight colonialism.
Why was there pushback? I don't know. I think that would, I think when anything is cemented and solidified and institutionalized, there's always going to be institutional pushback to those changes.
I think what I appreciated most about you guys having to go through that experience was learning that there's a continuum of activism and there's a continuum of consciousness around philosophy and politics. And it helped you to see that everybody doesn't think the same way and they don't operate from the same vantage point.
We came out of it, though, we as in the group of us, MEXA at MSU at the time, we came out of it much stronger, because I think we took the name we forged it even harder, and now it's become very much more prominent,
Right.
So, all hail the X.
More than 24 Michigan State University students protested today the lack of support at the school for Chicano or Latino students.
We want Xicano Studies at this university!
The students signed out more than 4,000 American history books from the MSU library. They say by doing so, they hope Americans will know what it's like not to be able to read about their history, something Chicano students say they can't do because there are no Chicano history books at the library.
Enough with the lies, the broken promises, the negligence with this university's administration.
We had the wonderful demonstration by the students that they decided to kidnap all of the history books of the MSU library. And that was just a wonderful day. The students brought in backpacks, wheelbarrows, little carts, anything they could, and they crashed the computers, put all the books into a U-Haul.
I remember exactly when it happened, like it was yesterday, me getting a call on my phone and folks from the administration office asking me what the hell's going on at the library. And then saying, I don't know what's happening. And Luis then coming over to my office and saying, you won't believe what just happened, but the students just pulled up a U-Haul, one of the 17 footers, to the front of the library, and they're starting to check out essential periodicals. And this is the week before finals. I thought it was the most genius thing student activists could do.
So we were able to like mobilize our entire Latino community. I went down to U-Haul, I picked up the truck, I drove that thing down there, we had all the dollies. I mean, we changed so much policy just in one day.
I mean, I knew it was going to happen on that day. Everybody knew it was going to happen. I get to the library, and there is was it a rider? Or was it a U-Haul? Backed up over the steps to the front door of the library. And I roll up and I see Luis Garcia, Dr. Lee June, standing a few yards from it, just kind of arms crossed, just kind of looking. And I roll up and I'm like, this is dope. This is interesting.
The news crew showed up and they started doing a press conference. And that immediately got the attention of the people in the library. They come out like, what's going on? And when Rosa Salas said, we're going to go in there and check out some books, you know, everyone kind of looked at each other. And it was like it was no hesitation. As soon as she got done talking to the press, she went right in there, everyone right behind her, and we just started clearing books off the shelves.
Outside the box thinking. People had done sit-ins. I went through sit-ins. Activism in that manner was commonplace. Activists weren't sophisticated enough to think about going to the library and pulling out essential periodicals, man, and, you know, stuff that they knew students would need right at that time period. It was ingenious. And it immediately got the attention of the administration on campus.
The provost, who was Luana at that time, called me immediately, suddenly, right? She knows who I am. And she says, oh, listen, don't worry about this. Everything's going to be fine. I said, no, I don't have any money. She said, you'll get your money.
The institution is not going to act unless there is irritation.
And I think it had them question how far a student group would go to make sure that there were going to be changes.
We rented the truck so we'd have some place to put the books. And then we went in, and my sister was really involved in this because she was one of the leaders in MEXA at the time. We were down in Detroit, so we came as the Braves to support the book checkout and helped them organize it. And then you just sort of went in and started pulling off these carts and just taking every book off the shelf, putting it on the cart, and going up and checking it out. The whole theme of it was, if we can't have access to our history, then no one else can either. Which I think was a good theme still. I mean, they had many choices, right? They could have not checked out any book to us, but how would that have looked? We refused to let a bunch of brown people check out books from the library. We would have made a lot of hay out of that. That's for damn sure.
If we can't read our history, then neither can you. Are you kidding me? How brilliant is that?
I think I always loved about the book checkout, it was just so clear. You had to be an idiot or a racist not to see the point.
The number one thing I remember about the book checkout is wanting to be part of it. I just thought that was such a badass move.
And I don't think that they've ever seen a student group that motivated to challenge them.
It was the smartest kinds of demonstrations that I have ever seen. No destruction, right? Only creation.
Nobody was in the street protesting. Nobody blocked traffic. Nobody was screaming or yelling. Nobody was out there causing chaos. It was quick. It was quiet. Folks got in. Folks got out. And it was done. And they didn't even know what hit them. Direct action. That's what worked. This was direct action. This was not another meeting with the administration. This was not another, bunch of lip service. It was get in and get the job done. And you can do nothing about it. And probably the most brilliant part of it was completely legal.
One of the things that I learned from being a student organizer is you can't go from this to this, even if you want to go there. And if you go too far, then you don't have any place to escalate to. And that's a big problem if you're going to be in this for the long haul.
You've held us hostage for centuries, so we're going to put a lock on this U-Haul. We're going to drive away with your books, and until you're ready to have an actual, real serious conversation talking about the Xicano Latino Studies program and and we're going to hold on to these textbooks.
I think that was the perfect plan. And like, I mean, who is not going to listen to you when you check out so many books? You know, you have to pay attention.
Their willingness to, tell us to shut up.
Yeah.
And, we were like, no, we're going to take all your books. And that's funny. That's, that was hilarious. I mean, everybody that participated, I mean, they understood it too. I think they understood exactly what we were doing.
And to this day, I get people like mentioning it to me. People who I've like never even met or heard of, asking about, were you involved with that?
This is a very famous student demonstration. I really didn't know the impact of how famous it would be until almost 18 years later. I'm sitting halfway across the country. Strangers are talking about this book checkout in front of me, and I'm like, yeah, I was there.
Administration, there was nothing they could do about it. Right, you were taking a right that students had and that are really essential to the ability to be able to engage with literature without limitation is absolutely critical. And so the fact that students use that power in a political capacity, it's a beautiful moment where you essentially used the power of the educational power of the institution as a research institution to sort of create that choke point.
The students then did their second demonstration, which was the removal of their identity. And they did that to say the racial identity only helps the university. It doesn't help the students in any way, which I thought was very smart, right? Very smart. Those two actions meant that I got a decent budget the next year.
People's hearts were in it. We're committed to all of the things, regardless if we were going to reap the benefit. Because Xicano Studies, that was something that I didn't necessarily get to reap the benefit of, but it was so important.
So I wrote up a one-page proposal. That's all they wanted. They didn't really think I was going to do anything. They just really wanted to shut down the students, right?
They were fearful of us. They did not like seeing us walk into the administration building in a group ready to confront someone. I mean, we were not afraid of that. Yeah, I don't know what we were really thinking. No, I do know what we were thinking. We knew that we could make the changes that had to happen, and we were going to do so by any means that we needed to, right? And that they were going to listen.
First thing the administration did was that I couldn't call it Xicano Studies.
Because that's what institutions do. You remove the politic from it. You remove all of its potential to challenge. And you just simply make it a field of study.
So when we heard the university's reaction, we were almost stunned that, we have Latin American studies, that they didn't understand who our community was, that they didn't even know the Chicano narrative in the U.S.
The 1990s end with the creation of Xicano Latino Studies. You and Dulcinea are the first two graduates of the CLS program, right? How do you think that studies programs affect the overall consciousness of a community? It's okay.
That was great. I felt like it was our job to create a program that of classes and great professors, Melendez, Pescador, just great professors, giving students opportunities to learn history and culture, maybe parts and bits of stories that you may have heard growing up.
How do you not teach Xicano Studies and call yourself an educational institution?
We are assaulted all the time with these negative ideas about ourselves and about whether we belong here. You have to have that counter narrative in your head, otherwise you can't really be who you need to be.
You think historically about what was classified or characterized as the classics, and it was very limited and narrow in scope. through student activism, the curriculum expanded.
It was about individuals willing to take a stand, sacrifice their time, their efforts, years of their lives in order to document the importance of ethnic studies.
We have been fighting this attempt to eradicate us for centuries. It's dangerous to forget that.
The thing with ethnic studies, it gives us this belief and concept that our history matters, and you actually start to learn it, and to realize that that we were contributors we were contributors, and then secondarily, it's important for non-people of color, for white people to get that perspective too.
The ability to develop your own narrative historically is huge. I mean, it's the reason why white people do it.
It was, we are creating a community. We are creating a place where you feel you belong, that you're safe here, right? You can say what you want.
So it emboldens, empowers the community, and it enriches everybody around it.
First we got tiny little offices, then we got bigger offices, all of them a fight. Every single time it was a fight.
We were a group of students in a university setting, and like any student, you're exposed to education at another level. You start reading new authors. You start being exposed to different lines of thinking. So there's really this awakening of knowledge within college students, and it goes any number of directions. But I think for Xicano students, it was an awakening that we realized we were being left out of the narrative.
The more I read about Chicano history, the more I learned about how we always resisted. And it's what I tell my students. We began to resist in 1848 as soon as they took everything away from us, right? The very moment that they did that, we began to resist. How it's shaped me? Well, it's given me hope for the future.
The question becomes, I think, how do you exist within institutions and change the culture of that institution while institutionalizing certain forms of knowledge without then totally, removing any potential for transformation?
You can't understand what's going on until you understand what's going on. So you have to get in there and you have to educate yourself.
The overall consciousness of the community is not going to be changed at the moment that the ethnic studies program is continuing.
Our literature, our knowledge, our history, our information, and everyone should have to learn about multiple histories. And that way you can actually, learn about his story in different ways. Because right now we still are just learning the Eurocentric version, and that's not beneficial for anyone.
Everybody in the group maybe had different motivations or different things that sparked their passion. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we're all fighting for the same thing at the end of the day. Xicano Studies. And we won, right?
If you cannot organize and work in your community, then you truly are lost. People have called me a failed academic. Okay, I'm a failure. I'm a migrant. But there are things that are important, and that is giving our communities, giving them the power to speak, to be articulate, and to go on and create more.
Do as much as you can while you're students. That is the most unique time in your life that you're going to be able to really have time to read about your history, to learn about your culture, and to apply those things that you learn.
You're going to do the best that you can, and if you lose, it doesn't necessarily mean that there should be some sort of round of recriminations to figure out what went wrong. We are up against some really powerful forces, and we just need to make the most progress we can.
Trabajadores y estudiantes, yo les vengo aquí a cantar que en este país tan rico aprendemos a luchar, que en este país tan rico aprendemos a luchar. trabajadores y estudiantes, yo les vengo aquí a cantar que en este país tan rico aprendemos a luchar, que en este país tan rico aprendemos a luchar. Estudiantes de mi raza, yo les vengo aquí a cantar que en este país tan rico aprendemos a luchar. El corrido de Xicano Studies por Jesús Chuy Negrete.
Bathrooms and in checkout lines that I'll never see again. But in that moment, it was like we were best friends, just having conversations. Sometimes the people who don't know the things you've done are the only ones who'll bother talking to you. Yeah, sometimes strangers are the best people to tell your secrets to. They don't know you. You know, lately I've been thinking about things I've lost, like mine, my heart, your baby blue eyes. And lately I've been wondering about things that haven't happened yet, like if I'll ever feel that way again. But the past's already happened, so I can't spend today digging through that shit. And the future hasn't happened yet, so there's no sense in worrying about it. Just living in this moment. And today I wish that I could put new glasses on your eyes so you could see the world the way I do through mine. Then maybe you wouldn't wanna die. You wouldn't have to stick a needle in your arm just to survive. Cause I see myself in every single part of you, and I made it through, so I can't just sit back and watch you throw away your life. And I don't give a shit if I'm the last person on this earth who believes in you. I'll show you how beautiful it is to be alive. And I will love you till you love yourself. I'll 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 love you till you love ourselves and I'll see